Well, this entire month on the Retirement Answer Man show, we have been exploring how to develop your identity in retirement. And we're going to tie that up in a nice framework today and have a conversation with a fellow Michigan State Spartan Go Green, Jerry Sadler, the co-author of Don't Retire, Rewire. So that's what we're going to do today on the show. My name is Roger Whitney. I am your host. And if you've not been here before, this is the show dedicated to helping you not just survive retirement, but rock retirement. So we're excited to close out this monthly theme. But before we do that, before we get started, I want to give you a preview of what we have coming in September. I'm horrible at previewing these for you. I'm sorry. I'll be better at that. So we are doing a brand new retirement plan live throughout the whole month of September. So if you've been a longtime listener of the show, you know what these are. But if you're new to the show, which we have a lot of new listeners, welcome. What we do is we find someone like you, a listener of the show, and we do a mini case study where I walk them through a truncated process that we use, our agile process. And you get to listen in as we define what their ideal retirement might look like. We organize their financial resources and talk through what they have to try to achieve that retirement. And then you get to listen as we talk about their hopes for the future, the things that they're really worried about. And together we can walk through the process of seeing how do we put all of this together for someone like you. And so obviously we change the name, we protect their identity, we change circumstances, but you get to listen in as I facilitate these conversations with them. And then we're going to do a live webinar where we'll put it all together and you can see whether their plan is going to work or not and how they might be able to tweak it to make it better. Now this time we are talking with someone who has been they've been thrown a curveball here in the last few years that is derailing what their original plans were for retirement. So it'll be interesting because it's not going to go perfectly, right? They just had a big curveball that they got to figure out how do they navigate. So maybe you can help a little bit on that. Now, one note there is we will be sharing some summaries of these things in our 6-Shot Saturday, which is our weekly email that we send out every Saturday morning. So if you want to receive some of those weekly summaries, go to rogerwhitney.com and sign up for 6-Shot Saturday. And that way you'll be assured to get those. So we're really excited about this. This is a fan favorite, a listener favorite. For now, let's go get on with the show. Hey, it's next week, and you know what? You still shouldn't take advice from me on this show because I don't know anything about you. Talk to people that know you. This is Helpful Hints in Education. All right, let's go put a framework together to help you find your identity. Given that this is the last week of this series, what I thought I would do is put together a framework, a step-by-step process that you can use based on the conversations that we've had this month on how do you navigate this change in life and finding your new identity. Here's how I see it based on everything that we've had. So number one, you really want to acknowledge who you currently are. You're a road warrior, you're a CPA, you're a business owner. Acknowledge your current identities and also acknowledge, as Dr. Joe Coughlin discussed, is that, hey, this isn't just getting old and being like your grandparents. This is going to be a long period of time, and you're going to be active and not necessarily fragile during that whole time. So it's not just mailing it in. This is like graduating college and starting your life. This is going to be a long period of time, so don't think of it as just getting old. So that's step one. Acknowledge your identity. And then step two is acknowledge and challenge the narrative that you may have of what retirement actually is. And a good book for that is Dr. Joe Coughlin's book, The Longevity Economy. All right, so that's step one. Once you've done that, step two is to reconnect with who you are, to do some self-examination. And in the series, we talked about using the Enneagram test, and we talked with Teresa McCloy, and she has the Enneagram in Your Real Life podcast, and she also does consulting on that to connect with what makes you tick, what makes your partner tick. That's probably just as important. So you can start to create this new you based on who you are in your authentic self, not who maybe your career made you be. So that's step two. Step three is to examine the past, examine your work career, personal life, all the things that you've built up, the systems, the relationships, the activities that you've built up, like you've added clothes to your closet over the years. Okay. We're going to take a sidebar here. I might get in trouble for this, but I think it's funny. So my wife was going through her closet, and doing some cleaning out. And she estimates, she's going to be so mad at me. Don't tell her I said this. There might be like 100 pair of jeans that she's accumulated over the years. Now, remember, we've been married like 30 years. So it's not like she's not a huge shopper. And when she shops, she's very frugal about it. But I think it's a great example, a physical example of the activities, the relationships, the obligations that we accumulate over years and years of being alive. Well, this is a perfect time to examine that and decide what to keep and what seasons have come to an end. Please don't tell my wife I talked about that. I'll get in trouble. And two good books for that are The Book of Mistakes by Skip Pritchard and Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. So that's step three. Now, step four is start to test and play. This is where you start to try on different identities, things that you enjoy, to see which ones are really resonate, because you don't know until you get there. So this is like experimenting, right? Just like your grandkids play a zillion different sports and have a bunch of different interests, and some of them wane away or fade away, and then others, that's really what they enjoy. So maybe it's playing the guitar, maybe it's learning a language, maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's doing pre-retirement work. But play with all of these, knowing that you're not obligated to keep all of these, so you can discover which ones are really a fit for you. And I think a great book to inspire you a little bit might be Love Does by Bob Goff. So that's the fun one. And then the fifth step is to choose one or two and start to lean into them and build a new reality around them and build habits that support them. I think two good books for that are Don't Retire, Rewire. We're going to talk to Jerry Sadler. She is just a million miles an hour. And also, I think another great book is Atomic Habits, which talks about this connection between our habits and our identities. And then the last step, and maybe the most important step, is don't put pressure on yourself. Enjoy the process. It's not a race. You have thousands of days in retirement to slowly create this new you, this new 3.0 version of you. It's not a project management exercise that has to have an end date. But some of us need that, but don't think you're going to figure it out in a week or a month or maybe even a year. It's an iterative process, and it will continually evolve, but I think it's going to lead you some pretty amazing places. So with that, let's go into our practical planning segment. All right, I am so excited to have Jerry Sadler, a Michigan State Spartan, hence the fight song at the beginning, and co-author with her husband, Rick Miners, of the book Don't Retire, Rewire, the third edition. She's kind enough, she's going to be doing a special event in the Rock Retirement Club where I'm going to have a conversation with her, and members are going to be able to ask questions and interact with her. So those are the kind of things we're trying to do so we can all walk this journey together. But with that, let's have a conversation with Jerry about how do you rewire. So Jerry, there's a little bit of pressure in this conversation with you and I. I didn't know if you knew that.
I didn't. Now I do.
Because this is our last conversation for at least this go round this month. And so we got to tidy this all up of how do we go through figuring out creating that new identity when we shed, VP of finance or whatever the title we've had maybe for decades. So my first question is, how did you come about dealing with this and talking about this with your book?
Well, I guess the most honest way to say is that I think since we were little, people have always asked us, regardless of our age, what are you going to do when you grow up? So right when you were a kid, somebody was putting this additional, I guess I'm going to say pressure on you to think about what are you going to do? And often it was going to be about work. So early on, this kind of got into our bloodstream. And then when we did enter the workforce or even in life today, and I think this happens a lot, particularly in America, when you meet somebody, one of the first questions, if not the first question they'll say is, so what do you do? A lot of people don't like that feeling because then it's right there about your work and it's about that you are just your work. And that's what began to bother me when the first edition of the book, we started working out the late 1990s, we thought that people were not focusing on the right things in the fact that they had become their business card. And we thought, if you don't have any other interests, if you don't have anything else going on, you're going to have a pretty rough time of it because you like having your title and having your identity. And not everybody falls into this. But the truth is, I and my co-author, Rick Miners, who's also my spouse, we said, you know what? People don't know themselves well enough. And this is really what led us to begin to talk to people about the other side, the life side of this whole thing called retirement or the future. So that's kind of a long way of getting around it, that we did a lot of research talking to people, and we heard about the pain that people felt when all of a sudden work of any sort was going to come off their screen. They felt the big question, well, who am I going to be? And what if people ask me that question? And what am I going to tell them?
Well, I think especially for baby boomers, because I sort of include myself in that because that's all I do. I know I'm like the high end of Gen X, right? Yeah, yep. 52. Baby boomers as a whole grew up in the time when corporations sort of instilled, you are with the company. And, I remember when we were studying Japanese manufacturing and you sacrifice yourself to the company. And that started to happen in the US where they just demand so much of you. There's not much space left to think of you outside of that work identity.
That really is it. And I think that the boomers, and I'm being a boomer myself, and that's why, the book being written, but, somebody told us to jump and our question was, how high? And, for a lot of people, we had the career ladder, you had the career pathing, you knew what you were shooting for. This could be in corporate America, but even, in the professions also, the lawyer, the doctor, the accountant, there were paths. I mean, you thought you'd become an entrepreneur long in the future when you did retire, which is so different than today. Nobody really talked about entrepreneurship in that way. So yeah, I think that boomers really, at least I feel, kind of followed a plan, had an expectation. And then you saw probably in the year 2000, the disintegration of things that were happening with corporations, with transitions, with outplacement, with people getting downsized. So right there, some of that bond really began to get rocked. And so some people really did have to rewire. They had to transition themselves earlier than they anticipated. But there was a feeling like, hey, I bought the package, I delivered the goods, I really had an expectation. And then you feel like you got blindsided or you didn't see it coming. So yeah, I think there are a lot of emotional, psychological, as well as physical and social things that boomers do feel. And, that the oldest of the Gen Xer, you're right on the cusp. So you've got a little bit of that boomer, but you really do have a lot of other characteristics that boomers don't have.
Well, and I think it was really a double barrel shotgun. It was 2000 and then 2008 when, we talk about the social contract being broke with pensions, but both of those really fractured the social contract and helped, I think, boomers think, wow, I got to figure this out for myself more than ever before.
You're exactly right. And so I guess that was why the interest and saying, okay, I'm not the psychologist or therapist, but really caring and intrigued with people and passion and human behavior. Probably one of the biggest things I still continue to think is that people don't know themselves well enough. It almost doesn't matter what age you are, but I think that particularly this whole thing on self-awareness, that's probably the most important thing you need to know going forward, that along with curiosity. But I really kind of discovered that a lot of people don't know what makes them tick. And man, this is a life stage you've got to know that. And that to me is the heart and soul of a lot of what I do.
One little experiment that I've done when I would go to a social function that was business oriented and, everybody's asking those normal questions like you did. So what do you do? Right? I would ask the question, so what are you passionate about? And it was interesting because you could tell the people that were like, that really aren't self-aware because they were like a deer in the headlight. What am I passionate about?
Yeah.
I don't have time to be passionate about anything.
Yeah. And I love the fact you asked that question. And you should know that I do a lot of, public speaking and that, and talking about longevity. I said the reality is we're living longer, healthier, overall younger lives. I can't say who's going to live to be 100, but, we're trending better. And when I said this to an audience, there was one woman in the front row. She said, yes, she was so excited because she said, I have postponed so many things. And now you have given me this time. And a moment later, I heard a man say, it's a curse. And I usually don't put audience members on the spot, but I couldn't resist. And so I said, why do you say that? And he said, I have been working so hard, managing life, my family, the balance. He said, I don't have a hobby. I don't have even an interest, let alone a passion. So this gift of time, which, you and I are thinking, wow, think of what you can do. He was not so happy about it. And this ties in with your thing when you ask people, what's your passion? Nobody really told us that early on. So now when you get this life stage, you're kind of like, whoa. I say on average, there's about 6 to 7% of people that really have a passion. And I think they're pretty lucky.
Well, I think this is something that some younger generations get a little bit more than we do. That I'm not saying they get it totally, but I think they're trying to get some more balance than I remember coming out of college. I felt like I was on this train, get a job at a corporation, go up the corporate ladder. I had this whole train that I felt like was on. So let's talk about a framework from going from, in the 15 minutes we have, let's talk about a framework from going from A to Z to being intentional. We don't have to think about this. And I love the rewire framework. It's not about retirement or not working. There's a whole middle ground in between. Let's just talk about how do we go from reconnecting with our drivers and starting to be intentional about creating those passions that may have been neglected for a long time.
My feeling is we should always be challenging ourselves, regardless of our age or stage of life, to really know what does motivate us or what does make us tick. So I do think we do short shrift on, even though there's tons of self-help books and psychology is a huge area, I still feel that we are not as proactive and we don't always take the time to discover ourselves until we get into a pickle.
Why do you think that is?
I think kind of what you said earlier, that we're moving quickly. At first, I think as a boomer, there was kind of this plan and this orderly and you laid out. And then I think 24/7. I think technology is a gift. I think it also has other sides that, not so good. So I think that if we were already kind of on this fast track, and when people talk about fast track, type A personalities, all these things, sometimes I think Americans pride themselves just on how, quote unquote, busy they can be, and have never really taken the time to stop themselves and say, busy is one thing, fulfilled is a whole other thing. And that goes back to kind of to your passion. We don't talk that way. Like in America, we'll say, well, we live to work. And in Europe, they look at us sometimes like, really? I mean, come on. Like, when, we use that line, oh, we've got to smell the roses, but do we? And I do think other generations have learned kind of from boomers, and it is filtering down. But to me, it does go back to the self-awareness. And how do you really get people to understand themselves? I did have a career also in the publishing business, and women's magazines are always fabulous. So they were in the past of giving out quizzes, and they were always asking. So it was kind of on your mind. And so I took that idea a little bit and said, well, as people think about their next act, and in a way, let's use the age of 50, just kind of, if it's a mid-mark, to kind of do a check-in with yourself. And, you can do it from a financial portfolio, but do it from a life portfolio. Am I leading the life I want? But also, how do you get a therapeutic session in a quick coaching manner? And that's what we did, this major piece of research. And we went out across the country. We talked to people. I'm originally from Michigan. We talked to people out there, working in the automotive industry at all levels. I live in New York now. We went everywhere, California. And we asked one key question, focus groups. And that we said, why do you, or did you work beyond money? And it was surprising because a lot of people kind of stopped. And all of a sudden, we ended up with 85 reasons that you alluded to and kind of called motivations, drivers. These were all unsolicited. And, people said, well, I want to have accomplishments. Other people said, I like to belong. Others said, I want to be creative, problem solving. And then some people honestly said, I like the power. Ooh, I like recognition. I like to be valued.
And it's good to be able to say that comfortably, right? Because it sounds weird, but those drivers having power is important if that's something, being the director.
You got it. And what we say, whether we're doing live work, it's written, whatever, we don't care what your drivers are, but we sure care that you know what your drivers are. Because at this life stage, let's say at 50, let's say you hit a wall. And you're thinking, and this is what just happened in some groups we did. And somebody said, Jerry, I'm looking for a new career. The person was 52. That'll take me to age 72 to 75. So that's a big aha now, because that has definitely been pushed out. And we always say, if you love what you do, and keep on doing it. Don't bop till you drop is our mentality. But if you're at 50 and you're saying, you know what, this career is changing, this field is changing, I want to try something else, in addition to your skills, your accomplishments, your attributes, know what makes you tick. Know if it's social, or if it's problem solving, or if you want a global component. I mean, the more of your personality and your needs you can put into the mix, the closer you're going to get to hitting your, bullseye on a new career, profession, or volunteer work. This doesn't have to be, as you said earlier, only for paid. This can be across the board. But it really does come back to, sitting down and saying, what does turn me on?
Well, it's funny because even if it's not work related, so I'll use my father-in-law as an example. And it's a running joke that I use him a lot, and he never listens to the show, and he has no idea. So I'm in trouble if he does. But he's retired General Motors, 30 plus years, and he's in his mid 70s now. And the one thing I realized about him as a son-in-law that helped me manage that relationship better is he is most happy when he is doing things for other people. And, for him, he was General Motors, hands-on types of things, because it used to annoy me. He would come over to fix my gutters, and I'm like, I didn't ask him to. What are you doing at my house? I'm a man. I can fix my gutters. But then I realized, no, that's his joy. He has to be able to do that. So even though he's not working, he, whether it's consciously or not, identified that about himself, and he goes and seeks it out.
Right. But you, as a smart son-in-law, then you saw it too, because what he has done now, it's a transference. He likes to help. He likes to make a difference. He likes to have a sense of accomplishments. These are his drivers. And all of a sudden, he's, and he also is valued when he does something like this. So then you initially can say, well, what's going on? But then you realize, hey, he's not in that GM workplace now, but now he's just transferring his skills into other areas, helping us, and he's getting what we would call driver fulfillment. But it helps when all of us become a little bit more aware of this, because that's what we say. It's all about the transference. And you kind of asked me a little bit of this process here. So when you begin to understand your drivers, and then it becomes obvious, wow, I'm getting these drivers fulfilled in the workplace. And then the big thing comes on, wow. And then what happens when that workplace is gone? Because this whole thing is under the umbrella of identity. But if your identity had been, I'm the engineer at GM and this is what I do, then all of a sudden it's like, well, where am I going to get that same driver fulfillment now? And we even have something that I would challenge people right now. Throughout the book, we have what we call a calendar exercise. I don't care if you're using a paper calendar, electronic, or whatever. If people really understood what they have on that calendar, and then next to it wrote, does this give me fulfillment? Or is this just something I do? Or somebody told me the other day, oh my gosh, I've been on this volunteer board for 10 years, and I've probably been on it 5 years too long. And you know what? I just realized it's a place on my calendar. It's still as important mission, but it doesn't make me feel really fulfilled anymore. So that's kind of a second thing is, take a look at your life today and saying, what's working for me? What do I want more of? And what would I be willing to give up and let go? It also lets you know at this stage too, is work the only thing on your calendar?
That's a good point. Once you know these drivers and you go through this, how do you start to lean into, okay, is it basically recreating something that will fulfill those drivers when you're not in full-time work, or how do you go about that?
If people listen, and said, I'm going to take a look at my drivers, what will happen to, and we really do work this very much in the book also, because somebody really can say, wow, I loved my job 2 jobs ago. I was getting great driver fulfillment, because what sometimes can happen is you get promoted and again, that natural ladder, but you really find out that some of the things that really were giving you your greatest joy and buzz are not in this current job. So when people begin to look at their drivers, it's for not only the future, but, my feeling is it's for the current. It's for the now, because my motto I love is you begin to build your tomorrow today. So you really begin to kind of do that shot, that I was going to say Kodak moment, but I guess that's really dating. It's kind of like
Kodak,
your
iPhone.
That? It's your selfie moment. And to really take a look. And that's that first step analysis part. But I guess the other thing is to take the time to do it. There's people who say, Jerry, this isn't working for me. So, those are some of the things you begin to sit down that you analyze. And then this calendar. And it sounds funny to say, but we walk out of an event or something and go, man, that was great. Man, it was working on all cylinders. Right there, I'm going to say stop. Stop and just analyze. Do like a little diagnostic and say why. Did you get the sale? Did you get the deal? Did you get the money? Did a child in your class go, yes? Right there are your telling moments. And that is part of your process and part of your journey.
That's interesting. When I think of, because I've been on a lot of this journey for 5 or 6 years, and it's totally changed my life. But it's funny, I was thinking about meetings, and then, we work with a small number of clients, and I had the epiphany once of, I only like working with really nice people because I'm not that great at conflict, and I like win-win. And then you started to filter, what you do with, in this case, I don't really connect with that person. It's not fun with them.
But there's your piece of knowledge. And especially when you're doing your own thing, you're saying, wait a minute, I'm in my own business. I can be selective. And the next time like something comes up and hey, there's a person that, hey, maybe they could be interesting to work with, but you know what we say, the stakes are too high. I really don't enjoy it in that. And then hopefully you'll have the guts to say, you know what? I don't think we're the right organization or the right person for you. But that's what I say to people all the time, that, when people are looking for new opportunities, sometimes they get so fearful. They go, I better take this, because they just don't know what else is coming down the pike. And I always say, be careful of that, because 18 months in, or maybe even sooner, if it doesn't feel right, it's not going to be right. But again, it goes back to doing the homework. We do due diligence from a business standpoint. What you and I are talking about is doing some due diligence on yourself.
What I would imagine one roadblock to this would be, especially if you're in a corporate environment, as you're becoming self-aware of, like I go through this exercise, I'll look at things and say, if I start to get frustrated, it's like, wait, I said yes to this. Yeah, I set this up to happen. Yeah, and that's really helpful because I technically have full control because it's my business. But what do you do when you have those things? It's like, I don't want this, but then you're in somebody else's structure corporately that you can't get out of it.
It isn't so easy to leave things today. We have responsibilities and obligations and that. But what I guess I really have seen is that I want people to be a bit more proactive, because often I see people who have complained for several years and then they either get downsized, they get thrust into a transition. And then the worst thing is they say to me, I did see it coming. So there are opportunities sometimes to change within your current corporation. I will say to people too, if there's a headhunter that calls you, please take the call. It may not be the right opportunity for you, but there is something, that get on their list. So, I guess the other thing that I'm going to say, networking is a lifelong skill and art and activity. And I know people will say to me, God, I'm so busy. I know I'm really not networking the way I should. And, to me, networking is about connecting. And today with technology, you do have a chance to be out there, to do an exploratory, to talk about something about a new career. I know that people are trying to balance everything and think about this new job, new opportunity. But you know what? It is rearranging some of your time. And if you really are saying this job's killing me, then you really got to be proactive.
Well, and it always comes down to what can I do next, right? So let's assume that we're not even talking work. Let's assume you're going into retirement and you talk about networking. Well, if all your friends are your work friends, if you do some self-awareness and you find some passions, now you need to start networking forward into who your future self is going to be. Let's say you love board games, which I love, and I don't have any local friends to play board games with. Well, I need to start networking to find some and nurture those. So when I have the time, I already have my new network there.
That's it. That is like the key message. That's why I said you use your today to build the tomorrow. And when you take a look and you see this calendar, when I said earlier, okay, where are you getting your fulfillment? Then when you take a look at all of these activities and you're like, whoa, they're all either work related. And when you leave any kind of position, you sell your business, you leave corporate, it doesn't matter what it is. There are a lot of people who look at their calendars and they're stunned because they're looking at a bunch of white space. And for some people, it's thrilling because you got the board games and you're thinking, man, how am I going to expand this? And there are other people who are just flat out, how am I going to fill this time? And that's where, if I could give everybody a gift, it would actually be the curiosity gene. Because then I think you can begin to go back and say, what did I like as a kid? I know more people who are taking up piano or guitar because it was something they wanted to do in the past. We even show you how do you do some self-excavation. I wish everybody would become like kind of mini archaeologists and go on their own personal digs. You knew you liked board games, but what about the person who said, man, I always used to I loved planes, somebody said, and he has actually built an airplane, what do you call it, like a simulator downstairs in their home. And he has joined a club. It is a global thing. Somebody else, even though they said, yeah, you can take pictures with your iPhone, they're still into, I think, Nikon, and they are joining these different clubs. But this is what you and I are really saying. It's doing some pre-work. It's understanding yourself. And it's saying, how do I begin to explore? This is where I've seen a difference in the genders. It's kind of like women will be out there. Okay, there's clubs, organizations. We can get involved with this. Some of the men that I've been working with will say to me, oh, I wish I would have joined, a golf club years ago. I wish I would have learned to play bridge. And they're only maybe 58, 59, 60 some right now. It's never too late.
A third of their life left.
But they hate being vulnerable. They hate being a beginner. And you don't want to be crass, but you want to say, get over that. Get 4 of you guys together who know nothing, hire the pro and go out there together. And it's like, don't cut off part of your future just because your ego, yeah, you might have been a big job and now guess what? You're out there learning and a beginner, but it is impossible no matter what the field, what the instrument is to go from 0 to 360. So that's one of the things I've seen that, hey, people, it's okay.
Well, Jerry, I am so glad that you and your husband came out with a 3rd edition of Don't Retire, Rewire. In our Rock Retirement Club, we've been going through an entire workshop to go through the exercises that you have in the book, which are great, because it's not just read it, put it away, but you can actually start to exercise those curious self-awareness muscles. So thank you for joining me to cap this important month. Fight, go team fight, victory for MSU. Did you recognize that song at the beginning of the show, Nicole? No, that was the Michigan State fight song.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I played that is because Jerry, who we just spoke with, one of the authors of Don't Retire, Rewire, she went to Michigan State, and we were talking after our conversation, and she was like, what? You went to Michigan State? And we had this whole Michigan State love fest.
And you sang the fight song together.
No, we did not, but I played it because I figured she'd listen to the episode, and I'm not telling her, so she'll get a hoot because she was really excited.
Okay.
It made me happy, so that's my happy for the day. You got any happy to talk about? Anything to inspire people?
I mean, I'm excited. It's what, the end of August?
It is the end of August. The heat's going to be gone.
I'm excited to the football season and fall and all that good stuff is just around the corner. I'm ready.
Yes, fall. My wife always she loves spring and get ready for, shorts and shirts, nice shirts and everything else. And then she's like, okay, I'm ready for this to be over. I want my sweaters.
I saw one of these Facebook memes or whatever the other day that described the seasons in Texas, and the current one was described as hell's front porch. And I think that's pretty accurate.
So related to weather, if you are in the Apple ecosystem, go pick up Carrot Weather. It's a great weather app, but you can dial it down. It has a personality. So you can go from nice up to snarky, up to sarcastic, up to downright rude and crude.
Wait, when it's giving you the forecast?
Yes. It'll drop the F-bomb if you dial it that high.
Wow.
But
I have never had that in my weather before.
But you could put it on snarky and it'll just be sort of sarcastic.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never seen a weather app that, one, it's very accurate and it makes me laugh.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a 7-day goal to take a baby step to live a happier life. So in the next 7 days, I got 2 things for you. Revisit the Hot Topic segment for the framework to work through figuring out your identity in retirement. I hope you enjoyed this series. And step 1B is go to rogerwhitney.com on the sidebar, sign up for 6 Shot Saturday, which is our weekly email, which is going to give you a lot of the summaries that we're going to create during next month's Retirement Plan Live. And if you're into those, you're going to want those. So sign up for 6 Shot Saturday, and I'm excited about it. Nicole, I'm so happy that school is back in, right? Summer was great, but school's back in.
Yeah.
And you know what that means, right?
No, what does that mean?
I have you for more hours. I've been plotting for how we will use those forever. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful day and hope you're excited about Retirement Plan Live. Have a great day.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.